Vamos a seguir con la siguiente sesión. Vuelve a ser en inglés, por lo tanto os invito a que miréis la parte inferior de vuestra pantalla donde sale un dibujito del globo terráqueo y pone interpretación. Dais ahí y lo podéis escuchar en castellano. Yo ahora voy a pasar a inglés. Thank you so much. I would like to welcome Adrian Bridge. He is the CEO for the Flatgate Partnership and the founder of the Porto Protocol. And Adrian, welcome to Marbella Futuro. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
How are you doing in Portugal?
Well, everything's good here in Portugal. Thank you very much. And you know, we've had an interesting couple of months, like all of you. But things are really opening up here in Portugal. So we're going to talk a little bit, I think, hopefully today about kind of what's happening and what we're seeing in respect to that.
Excellent. So you were going to tell us some of the measures that you have taken to help your staff go back, because from your point of view, the psychology of returning to normality, it's a big issue.
Yeah, I think that, you know, obviously, as we're on the World Climate Day today, I think it's important that we sort of look at what's happening in the travel industry, because all of us have seen that since the lockdown, the air has got cleaner. We've noticed our environment around us. Nature has not stopped in its progress, and you know, the steadily improving air has certainly made life a lot better. But the correlation that we see, therefore, between climate and travel industry is very, very important. However, the travel industry is an important part of the world's economy, employing nearly 15% of the world's population. So it's very important that it sort of certainly comes back into some sort of degree of new normality. Certainly, despite the fact that there hasn't been a lot of travel around the world, we've had the warmest May on record in most parts of the world. And it is, in a sense, shows us the sort of correlation between what we have done in the past and the legacy that we still have. And so, I guess when we
lo que hacemos hoy día o en el futuro, pero cuando tenemos una crisis ahora, tenemos la oportunidad de repensar cómo vamos a hacer las cosas. Tenemos que decidir dónde queremos estar cuando todo vuelve a la normalidad. Si el viaje, si la industria de los viajes, si queremos viajar otra vez, va a haber una tendencia para un staycation, es decir, quedarse en su casa, pero viajando en su propio país. Las fronteras entre Portugal y España va a abrir
in an opportunity to travel within the Iberian Peninsula fairly shortly. And indeed, you know, what we've seen, we opened our hotels, some of our hotels about 10 days ago, and we've certainly seen a good demand for people to go particularly into the countryside. And I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. I mean, to a certain extent, Portugal's had a benefit of having, if it can be said, a good crisis, insofar as the number of people infected has been fairly limited. Our health service has certainly been very resistant, and we've had very high testing rates. So the country is considered to be fairly safe. But I think what we want to do when we talk about travel and whether people will go back to travel is we kind of need to remember why people travel. And I tend to like to use the word traveler rather than a tourist. And the reason for that is that I think a tourist is somebody who simply goes to a place and uses its services. A beach holiday might be a good example of this. And we can go to beach holidays in many parts of the world. We don't actually have to go to another country if we simply want to enjoy sunshine and sit on the sand. You know, a traveler is a little bit different. A traveler is somebody who goes to discover. And the purpose, therefore, of travel is important in so much as it sort of opens up our minds. It gives us experiences. It certainly leads to greater diversity of thought, because we have this opportunity to interact with other people, have a chance to discover other current cultures, other ways of doing things. You know, one of the realities of lockdown is that we've all kind of got close to our families. We've rediscovered the importance of those close relationships, but we probably haven't met anybody new. And I think that it's probably essential to the human spirit that we continue to explore, to meet new people, to get new ideas. And that's why I think travel is probably important to our well-being, and probably why humanity has always traveled to a certain degree. I think the second point about travel that we should remember is that it is probably one of the most effective tools to transfer wealth from the more affluent parts of the world to the poorer nations. And this is really important if those poorer nations are going to be able to adopt new technologies, invest in infrastructure, invest in things that will help the climate in their area. We can't have a situation where part of the world remains poor and without opportunity. And I think one of the major things is that travel gives us that chance to move around, and it is this big transfer of wealth. I think the other important point is it's a transfer of knowledge. I mean, we help to understand other cultures with greater understanding of cultures. I think we gain a lot more emotional intelligence. We end up being better human beings as a result. So I think travel itself is going to be something that comes back. It may take a little bit of time, but what I've been sort of thinking about has been the psychology, in a sense, of bringing people back to travel, back to work, particularly in the hospitality area. There was a study done a few months ago by McKinsey, which looked at the industries that were probably most impacted by coronavirus, or had the potential to be most impacted, and the ones that were least able to work in a remote fashion. And of course, the hospitality industry is just that, because it is all about human interaction. You know, one of the psychological challenges that we have to remember is that the average human being has around about 80,000 thoughts in a day. And I think probably over the period of coronavirus, by virtue of media, social media, conversation, continual focus, many of those thoughts have purely been dominated by this particular disease. You know, we saw at the outset that the governments around the world were extremely effective at transmitting the sense of risk that existed with coronavirus, and this put many, many people into panic. And it's a very strange sort of mental process that 3 months ago we were all being told that virtually bumping into any stranger was almost a death sentence. Anybody that you didn't know passing relatively close to you represented a huge risk to your life, and this has led to enormous levels of anxiety. And you know, I think there was an American author, sociologist, scientist called Napoleon Hill, who said something like, you know, fear is no more than a state of mind, and that is to an extent true, and of course it can't be argued with. So the problem we have here is, how do we get people back into the workplace? How do we get them back into travel? And many people will be suffering from anxiety. Many people will go on to suffer from depression. Many, in fact, may go on to have post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of this lockdown. And one of the biggest casualties we saw of that whole process of anxiety and stress was that the question of trust became focused for most people. You know, the question is, who could we trust? What could we trust? And if you think about the question of what we can trust when it comes to travel, you know, the first and foremost we're going to have to think about is an aeroplane. How you know, we've all probably had an experience in the past where we've got into an old aircraft in some parts of the world, and just because of the state of the airplane itself, we've felt more anxious, not certain whether we're going to be able to arrive at our destination safely. We feel a very different experience when we get onto a brand new plane that is all comfortable and new. And this may not be totally logical, because I'm sure the skill of the pilot has got as much to do with it, but it is a question of what we trust. And I know that airlines are going to probably make a huge amount of effort to do the cleaning protocols, make us all feel safe. But it's going to be interesting how we see the difference between how an airline reacts and how, for example, an airport operates. How do we go from being in an airport concourse that's 2 meters apart from each other, and yet get onto an airplane where we're sitting side by side? So joined up thinking is going to be extremely important to the travel and transport industry. Hotels themselves have got many challenges. Here in Portugal, we've actually had a full what's called a clean and safe program that's put in place by Portugal Tourism. It's now fully working, and I think it's one of the first to be in the world. And this involves many new protocols, cleaning, distancing, and of course staff wearing masks. We ourselves have opened hotels, and we've started to see how customers react. It's kind of interesting that, for example, all of our suites have sold out before our standard rooms, because people want space because they feel safer and more at ease. They want to eat outside because they feel safer. We're not, for example, seeing much demand for room service, and that's because it might almost seem counterintuitive that a guest who wants to feel safe might want to stay in their room. But in fact, I think many of the people who are currently traveling see themselves as pioneers. And if they've dared to go and stay in a hotel, then they're perfectly happy to go to the hotel restaurant. But I think it's when we get the guest interacting with staff that we have challenges. And that's not because the staff themselves don't understand hospitality. It's not that they're very anxious. I mean, some of them are, but most of them aren't. The problem comes is that they're wearing masks and face shields. We look back into a study done in the University of California, LA, back in the 1970s. It looked at how people actually communicated. And the study showed that 55% of communication comes from body language, 38% from voice and tone, and only 7% from the actual words that people used. And we have to really think carefully about this. And if 55% of our communication is body language, part of that comes through facial expressions, from understanding how people are expressing their words, whether they are saying one thing but actually meaning something different. If body language is how we get close to each other, we shake somebody's hand, we express our trust in somebody through that physical proximity, or indeed through shaking a hand. We can't do that. We can show welcomeness by smiling, but again, that is hard to do. It's particularly difficult if we've got a mask and the only thing we can do is communicate by our eyes and using our eye expression, particularly when you're 2 meters away from somebody. It's going to be very, very difficult. And the 38% that comes from voice and tone is also disturbed by a mask or a face screen or whatever. And I'm sure we've all had the experience that when we don't think we can fully hear somebody, we might be in a crowded room or noisy space, what we start to do is we start to lip read them to try to help our understanding process. Again, lip reading disappears if we are using face masks. So then what we're left with in terms
Sorry, we got 1 minute.
Say again? Okay, so what we're left with communication is just that 7%, which is about words. So what that is we've got to choose our words carefully, we've got to transmit them clearly, and we've got to be very, very consistent. And I think that what I'd like then to sort of finish on with a thought is perhaps this idea that we have been taught for the last 3 months, that we have been told to be socially distant. And I'm not sure that that is the right expression. And if we've got to choose our words carefully, I'd like to leave a thought with everybody about the concept of social distancing. There isn't really a medical logic for social distancing.
Ni una lógica de distanciamiento social, pero los científicos y los médicos tienen que nos dicen que tenemos que estar físicamente separados para ganar la confianza en este sector. Tenemos que ser socialmente cercanos, pero lo que me gustaría que pensarais es que en vez de decir
say physically distant and socially close. So those are some thoughts. Stay safe, everyone. Stay physically distant and stay socially close. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adrian. I love your final remarks. Physically distant and socially close. I think that's brilliant. Once again, it's great to collaborate with you. Please give my best wishes to your family and to all your team at Taylor's and the hotels, and of course the World of Wine, which is a magnificent venture that we'll have the opportunity to tell people, what's cooking in Oporto. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pancho. Good luck and well done with this initiative. I think it's fantastic. It's been a wonderful day so far. I know you've got many good speakers to come. So thank you very much for the time you gave me.
Thank you, Adrian. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.